Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to our little corner where we share our deepest secrets and stories. My mother-in-law, a powerful and cruel woman, did not hesitate to hire a hitman to kill me just so her son could divorce me without complication. But she never imagined that I would turn her plan against her, faking my own death only to return and trap her with the very same depraved butcher she had hired. And when my spineless husband opened that fateful door, the horrifying scene within made his face drain of all color as he collapsed in shock. How did this bitter tale of revenge unfold in all its detail? You are invited to listen to the full story. I remember that fateful night, as if it were yesterday. A late-season New York storm raged outside, the rain lashing against the panoramic windows of the penthouse, creating a mournful, howling sound as if weeping for my fate. Inside, the air was colder and more suffocating than the storm itself. I stood there, my hands clenched tightly on my simple white apron, my head bowed, not daring to look at anyone. Before me, a lavish dinner I had spent all afternoon preparing expensive, gourmet dishes sat steaming on the table, untouched. Seated around the polished mahogany dining table were unfamiliar but powerful faces. They were important business partners of my husband, Kevin Davenport, and they sat in attendance. At the head of the table sat not my husband, but my mother-in-law, Victoria. Her face was impeccably made up, her hair styled in a sophisticated updo, but her eyes, sharp as daggers, were fixed on me, filled with an undisguised contempt and fury. The dreadful silence was shattered by a piercing crash. Victoria had hurled her crystal glass to the floor. Rich, red wine splattered across the expensive Persian rug like blood, staining my last shred of dignity along with it. She slammed her hands on the table and rose, a diamond-ringed finger pointing directly at my face. Her voice was a shrill screech, like metal scraping against glass. "Eleanor, look at yourself. Do you have any idea how important tonight's dinner is? Do you know who our guests are, and yet you dare to greet them in this provincial attire? The dress you are wearing isn't fit to be my cleaning rag. Are you trying to embarrass this family? To sabotage my son's career?" I froze, looking down at the pale blue dress I was wearing. It was the nicest, most presentable outfit I owned. I had thought it was perfectly appropriate for meeting my husband's business partners. But in Victoria's eyes, it was an insult. I stammered, my voice trembling. "Victoria, I'm sorry. I didn't know." "Didn't know?" Victoria sneered, a chillingly cold smile on her lips. "What does someone of your background know? You're only good for slaving away in the kitchen, cooking your simple little meals. I've told Kevin countless times, marrying you would only hold him back. Look, everyone, take a good look. This is my daughter-in-law. Does she look like she belongs with my son?" All eyes in the room turned to me. There was curiosity, pity, and even some mocking glances. My face burned hot, and a ringing started in my ears. I felt like a criminal on public trial. I glanced at my husband. Kevin was sitting there, his face pale, head bowed, his hands clasped tightly under the table. He didn't dare look at me, nor at his mother. He managed only a weak, mumbled plea. "Mom, stop it. We have guests." "So what if we have guests?" Victoria snapped, turning on her son. "It's precisely because we have guests that I must say this, to let everyone see your foolish choice. Look at your wife, and then look at yourself. A young, promising director with a brilliant future, and you marry an orphan. No family connections, no education to speak of, completely useless to your career, nothing but a leech. You are a disgrace to this family." Her words were like knives, stabbing straight into my heart. I bit my lips so hard I tasted blood, trying to keep from crying out. The physical pain was nothing compared to the wound in my soul. No education? I graduated with top honors from a prestigious university. Useless to his career? The entire business plan that helped his company survive the last recession, the breakthrough marketing ideas that landed him major contracts, all of it was from me, from my sleepless nights of work. But I never took credit. I was content to be the silent shadow behind his success, happy in his achievements. I had naively believed that as long as he was successful, as long as our family was happy, my sacrifices were worthwhile. But I was wrong. In my mother-in-law's eyes, I would forever be nothing more than a girl from the wrong side of the tracks. And my husband, the man I loved and supported with all my heart, now sat in silence like a coward, letting his wife be humiliated. The party atmosphere was utterly ruined. The guests, looking uncomfortable, stood up one by one, making excuses before leaving. The vast living room was soon empty, leaving only the three of us and a silence as heavy as a tombstone. When the door closed behind the last guest, Kevin finally dared to lift his head. He didn't look at me, but at his mother, his voice filled with reproach, yet laced with fear. "Mom, why did you do that? They're important partners of mine. How am I supposed to face them now?" Victoria, far from remorseful, snapped back. "Face them? What face do you have left? It was your wife who embarrassed you. Did you see the look on Mr. Harrison's face when he left? Do you know how he looked at your wife? With contempt. What do you think he'll think of a director who can't even manage his own wife? Do you think he'll risk investing capital in someone with such poor judgment?" Kevin was speechless. He turned to me, his eyes holding no defense for me, only anger and blame. "Eleanor, do you see? This is all your fault. I told you to dress appropriately." I was stunned. So, in his eyes, the fault wasn't with his mother, who caused the entire scene, but with me, with my dress. I let out a bitter, tear-filled laugh. My clothes? What was wrong with them? What did I do wrong? I was just being myself. Or would you have preferred I dress up in expensive designer labels, caked in makeup, a fake persona like all those other women out there? "How dare you talk back?" Kevin shouted, pointing at me. "Look at yourself. Don't you see the Grand Canyon of difference between you and my mother? You are not worthy of being in this family. Enough!" Victoria's sharp voice cut through Kevin's tirade. She walked towards me, leaned in close, and whispered in an ice-cold voice, meant only for me to hear, "Listen to me very carefully. I'm giving you 3 days. Write up the divorce papers yourself and get out of this house. If you don't blame me for being cruel." With that, she turned and walked upstairs, the very image of a victor. She left Kevin and me standing there. Kevin looked at me for a moment, a flicker of guilt in his eyes, but it was quickly extinguished by his own cowardice. He sighed, then silently retreated to his study, slamming the door shut as if to escape it all. I was left alone in the cold living room, amidst the now cold dinner and the shards of the broken crystal glass, a perfect mirror of my shattered heart. That night, I couldn't sleep. I curled up on the living room sofa, hugging my knees, tears falling silently. I couldn't believe the marriage I had worked so hard to build for 3 years could end so cruelly. I loved Kevin. I loved him so much. But was that love enough to hold on to a man who no longer wanted to be by my side? A man who always put his mother before his wife? Around 2 a.m., as I was lost in a fog of sorrow, I heard the faint creak of my mother-in-law's bedroom door opening. I flinched, quickly wiping my tears, holding my breath to listen. I heard her soft footsteps descending the stairs and stopping in the living room. She must have thought I was asleep in my room. Peeking through a gap in the sofa cushions, I saw Victoria standing by the window, dialing a number on her phone. She raised the phone to her ear, her voice a whisper, but in the dead of night, I heard every single word with chilling clarity. "Hello, is this Marcus? It's Victoria. The job we discussed before, it's time to proceed. Follow the plan exactly. Stage a car accident. Remember, it has to look authentic, and most importantly, it needs to be clean. No loose ends. The price is not an issue." My heart stopped. An accident. Clean. No loose ends. The words were like sharp needles piercing my brain. She didn't just want me to divorce her son. She wanted me to disappear from this world forever. A shiver ran down my spine. I trembled uncontrollably, not from the cold, but from sheer terror. The woman I had called Mom for 3 years was plotting to murder me. The midnight phone call from Victoria was a death sentence hanging over my head. 3 days. I had only 3 days to decide my fate. But in reality, I had no choice at all. She wasn't giving me a choice. She was issuing an order. This luxurious penthouse, which I had once naively called home, had now become an invisible prison, and the warden was none other than my mother-in-law. I dragged my heavy feet back to the bedroom, my body exhausted but my mind stretched taut like a violin string. I didn't dare to cry, not daring to show any weakness. I knew that in this house every emotion of mine was under surveillance. Any tear would be seen as feeble resistance, only serving to delight Victoria further. I closed the bedroom door, locked it, and leaned against the cold wood, slowly sliding to the floor. Only in the privacy of this small space did I allow fear and despair to consume me. Murder me. Those two words echoed in my head, cold and merciless. What had I done wrong? I had tried to be a good wife, a devoted daughter-in-law. I gave up my career, my friends, my very self to dedicate my life to this family. And what did I receive in return? My husband's betrayal, my mother-in-law's humiliation, and now a cold-blooded murder plot. I looked around the elegant bedroom, once the sanctuary for Kevin and me. Everything in it, from the cream-colored curtains and the soft wool rug to our wedding photos hanging prominently on the wall, had been chosen by me. In the photos, we were smiling happily. Kevin held me tightly, his eyes filled with adoration. Was that smile, that look, all a lie? Or had his love for me truly died, buried under ambition and weakness? I remembered our early days of marriage. Kevin had been a good husband then. He would come home early to help me cook, and on weekends we would go to the movies or for walks in the park. He said he loved my simplicity, my pure soul. He said he was lucky to have married me. Were those sweet words, those caring gestures, just part of an elaborate play to deceive me? But then, as his company grew, as he was promoted and praised, he changed. He came home later, the number of social functions increasing. He started criticizing me for being plain, for not knowing how to dress, for being unhelpful in his networking efforts. And his mother, Victoria, acted as a toxic catalyst, constantly adding fuel to the fire. She found fault with every dish I cooked, scrutinized every outfit I wore. She planted poisonous thoughts in Kevin's head, telling him I was a burden, an obstacle to his advancement. "Son, you must understand," she would say. "For a man to achieve greatness, he needs a wife who can be a strong support, who knows how to navigate society, who comes from a family that can be a stepping stone. Your wife, she's a good person, but her goodness does nothing for you. She's suited for a quiet life back in whatever small town she came from." I had heard such words from Victoria countless times. At first, Kevin would defend me. "Mom, don't say that. I love her for who she is." But like water dripping on a stone, Victoria's words gradually seeped into his mind. He began to believe his mother was right. He started looking at me differently, with eyes full of weariness and disappointment. And tonight was the culmination of it all. The play was over. They no longer needed me. They wanted to discard me like an old, worn-out object. But divorce alone wasn't enough. They were afraid I would cling on, afraid I would tarnish Kevin's reputation, so they chose the most brutal method, sending me to my grave. I sat there in the darkness, enveloped by a profound sense of loneliness and helplessness. What could I do? Call the police? I had no proof. Would anyone believe my word against theirs? Or would they think I was insane, trying to frame my mother-in-law to save my marriage? In this society, those with money and power always held the truth in their hands. And I, a girl with no connections, no wealth, was just a speck of dust. I drifted in and out of these thoughts until dawn approached. I fell into a restless, nightmare-filled sleep on the cold floor. The next morning, I tried to act as if nothing had happened. I still woke up early to prepare breakfast for Kevin. He emerged from his study, his face gaunt from lack of sleep, dark circles under his eyes. He looked at me, his gaze slightly avoidant. Perhaps he still felt guilty about last night, but that guilt was minuscule compared to his cowardice. Are you okay?" he asked hesitantly. I placed a plate of eggs on the table, looked up at him, and forced a smile. "I'm fine. I think I was just tired yesterday, which made things tense. I'm sorry." Kevin breathed a sigh of relief. He was always like that, always wanting to avoid problems. My apology gave him the perfect excuse not to face the truth. "Good. I'm glad you're okay," he said, then sat down and ate his breakfast quickly. "I have an important meeting today. I'll probably be late." I watched him in silence, a bitter feeling rising in my chest. He was still living his life, pursuing his career, completely unaware that his mother was planning to murder his wife. Or perhaps he knew and chose to ignore it. The thought made me shudder. Victoria did not appear all day. She locked herself in her room, perhaps to avoid me, or perhaps to finalize her wicked plan. I was alone in the house, but I felt as if countless invisible eyes were watching my every move. I tried to clean the house, water the plants, do anything to keep my mind occupied, but fear hung over me like a dark cloud. In the afternoon, while cleaning the living room, I heard the phone ring from Victoria's room. Normally, I would have paid it no mind, but today, a dark premonition urged me on. I tiptoed upstairs and pressed my ear to her door. Victoria's voice was faint, but I could make it out. "How is it, Marcus? Is everything ready?" "Good. Remember, tomorrow at 9 a.m. Sharp. She'll be at the market on Astoria Boulevard. Just run the truck recklessly and hit her straight on. Make sure to hit her from behind to make it look like a typical traffic accident. Once the job is done, the money will be transferred to the usual account." My body went rigid. So, tomorrow was my judgment day. The slaughterhouse had been prepared, and I was the lamb, trembling, waiting to be butchered. Her plan was so detailed, so cruel. She even knew my daily routine. She was leaving me no chance of survival. But there was one thing she hadn't counted on. This lamb, no matter how weak, would not go silently to its death. When cornered, even a lamb will fight back. A crazy, yet singular idea sparked in my mind. She wanted me dead? Fine. I would die for her, but my death would be the beginning of her downfall. And the butcher she hired, was he truly a cold-blooded killer, or was there another secret hidden behind that facade? The name Marcus and the image of a truck swirled in my mind like a recurring nightmare. That night, I barely slept. Every small noise in the house, the wind whistling through a crack in the window, a tree branch scraping against the roof made me jump. I felt like prey being stalked by a predator, hiding in the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to pounce. I had to save myself. I couldn't just sit here and wait to die, but what could I do? Run away? Where could I go? Victoria was a woman with money and connections. No matter where I ran, she would find me, and my death then would likely be even more horrific. Calling the police, as I had considered, was useless without proof. It would be my word against hers. I shot up from the bed, pacing the room like a caged animal. My mind raced, desperately searching for an escape. Then, in the depths of my despair, a faint image from my past surfaced. It was a boy, skinny and dark, about 10 years old, huddled in a corner of the yard at my childhood home in Ohio. His clothes were torn, his face smudged with dirt, his large, round eyes red from crying. It was a cold winter afternoon. The boy had collapsed in front of our house from hunger and cold. My parents, simple and kind people, had brought him inside, fed him, and gave him warm clothes. His name was Marcus. He was an orphan who had been living on the streets. After that day, my parents let him stay, treating him like an adopted son. He lived with our family for nearly 2 years, helping my parents with chores. He was a good, hard-working kid, and he was especially fond of me. He always called me Ellie and followed me around like a little bodyguard. Then one day, he vanished without a word. My parents searched everywhere but couldn't find him. Everyone assumed he had run off with a bad crowd or found a better place to live. The memory had faded over the years, but the name Marcus was etched in my mind. Could it be? Could the hitman Victoria hired be the same Marcus from all those years ago? It was an unbelievable coincidence, but in my desperate situation, it was my only glimmer of hope. If it was him, would he still remember me? Would the kindness my family showed him be enough to make him stop? Or had years of living on the streets turned him into a different person, a cold-hearted killer who would do anything for money? I didn't know, but I had to try. I had no other choice. The next morning, I went about my routine as usual. I woke up early, prepared breakfast, and then grabbed my basket to go to the market. My heart pounded in my chest. I knew every step I took out that door was a step closer to death, but I couldn't turn back. I deliberately walked slowly, scanning my surroundings. Astoria Boulevard was bustling in the morning. I went into the produce section, pretending to choose vegetables, but my eyes darted around, searching for a truck, for a familiar face. And then I saw it. An old, beaten-up truck, its body caked with mud, was parked at the end of the street, hidden among other delivery vehicles. A man sat in the driver's seat. He wore a baseball cap pulled down low, obscuring most of his face, a cigarette dangling from his lips. He was looking in my direction, his gaze cold and emotionless. My heart skipped a beat. Though I couldn't see his face clearly, I had a strong feeling it was him. Marcus. Trying to stay calm, I moved deeper into the market, blending into the crowd. I had to find a way to approach him, to talk to him before he could act. But how? If I got too close, he might strike immediately. I wandered around the market, my mind working furiously. Then, an idea came to me. I went to a fruit stand and bought a large bag of oranges. Then, I walked towards the truck, not directly, but circling around from behind. I intentionally walked close to the curb, where there was a puddle of dirty water. As I passed the rear of the truck, I pretended to slip, falling hard to the ground. The bag of oranges flew from my hand, the bright fruit scattering everywhere. "Ah!" I cried out in pain. The fall was real enough to scrape my elbow, drawing blood, but I didn't care. My plan had worked. My cry drew the attention of people nearby, including the man in the truck. He opened the door and got out. He was tall and powerfully built. As he approached, he was still wearing the cap, but I could now see his face more clearly. It was a chiseled face, tanned by the elements, with a long scar across his left cheekbone. His eyes were still cold, but for a fleeting moment, I saw a flicker of surprise, of confusion. "Are you okay, miss?" he asked, his voice deep and raspy. I looked up, directly into his eyes. I didn't answer his question. Instead, I called out a name I hadn't spoken in over a decade. "Marcus, is that you?" The man froze. His formidable body went rigid. The cigarette fell from his lips. His eyes widened in utter disbelief. He stared at me, as if trying to find the little girl he once knew in the woman before him. I knew I was right. He was the Marcus I had been searching for, but his next reaction would decide everything. Would he acknowledge me and stop, or would he deny everything and carry out Victoria's plan? My entire world seemed to pause in that moment, waiting for his answer. Could a fragile bond from the past be strong enough to overcome the vicious power of money? Time seemed to stretch on indefinitely. I remained on the ground, looking up at the man who stood frozen before me. The chaotic sounds of the market faded into the background, leaving only the two of us, facing each other on the precipice between life and death, past and present. A few kind passers-by had stopped, intending to help me up, but one cold glance from Marcus made them hesitate and then quickly walk away. His tanned face twitched. His lips parted as if to say something, but no words came out. The shock in his eyes was gradually replaced by a complex, indescribable mix of doubt, confusion, and something that looked like pain. He took a step back, turning his face away as if to avoid my gaze. "You've got the wrong person," he said, his voice hoarse, and turned to walk back to his truck. "No," I cried out, my voice breaking with desperation. I couldn't let him go. If he left now, all my hope would vanish. Gritting my teeth, I pushed myself up, ignoring the shooting pain in my ankle from the fall. I grabbed his arm, an arm as solid as steel. "I'm not mistaken. It's me, Eleanor. Ellie. Don't you remember? That winter, if it weren't for my parents, you would have frozen to death on the street. Have you forgotten the meals, the clothes my mother gave you?" Every word I spoke was like a needle pricking at his dormant memories. I felt his shoulder tremble. He didn't turn back, but he didn't pull his arm away either. I knew he was wavering. "Marcus," I continued, my voice softening, thick with emotion. Where have you been all these years? My parents and I searched everywhere for you. We were so worried. Why are you here? Why are you doing this kind of work? How much did that woman pay you to kill me?" My final question struck him like a sledgehammer. He spun around, no longer avoiding my eyes. In their dark depths, I no longer saw the coldness of a hitman, but the tormented conflict of a trapped man. You know everything?" he stammered. I nodded, tears finally streaming down my cheeks. "I heard it all. She wants me dead so her son can divorce me." "Marcus, why you? How could you bring yourself to harm someone who once saved you?" Marcus bowed his head, his large hands clenching into tight fists, knuckles turning white. I have no choice," he said, his voice laced with bitterness. "I owe her a great debt. If I don't do it, not only me, but my family, they will be in danger." "A debt? What do you owe her?" I asked, astonished. "She's a monster, a devil in disguise. You can't work for her. You don't understand." Marcus growled, then lowered his voice, filled with helplessness. "She saved my life once. In this world, a blood debt must be paid with blood. I can't defy her." I was stunned. So there was a complicated bond between them. But I couldn't give up. "What about the debt you owe my family, the life my parents saved? Is it worth less than your blood debt to her?" Marcus was silent. My words had hit his weakest point. He stood there, a mountain of a man who, in that moment, seemed more fragile than ever. He was caught between two debts. One of life, one of blood, one to a benefactor, one to a ruthless employer. He had to choose, and his choice would determine my fate. I knew I couldn't force him. I could only hope that the sliver of conscience he had left, the humanity of the young boy from years ago, would conquer the demon inside him. "Marcus," I said, my voice gentle but firm, "I'm not asking you to choose. I'm just asking you to think carefully. If you harm me today, you might repay your debt to her, but you will incur another one, a debt to your own conscience, and that debt will follow you for the rest of your life." With that, I let go of his arm. I didn't plead or cry anymore. I turned and limped away, gathering the scattered oranges. I left him alone with his internal battle. I had done all I could. The rest was up to fate. I had only taken a few steps, my heart in my throat, when I heard his voice call out from behind me, stopping me in my tracks. "Ellie!" I slowly turned around. Marcus was standing there, his baseball cap now removed. His dark hair was cut short, his face weathered but resolute. He looked at me, the conflict in his eyes replaced by a steely determination. I won't hurt you," he said, each word spoken with conviction. "But I can't defy her either. If I don't do it, she'll just hire someone else, and then I won't be able to protect you." My heart, which had been crushed by 1,000-pound weight, was suddenly released, but his next words plunged me into a new anxiety. "Then, what do we do?" I asked, my voice filled with confusion. Marcus glanced around, then came closer, lowering his voice to a whisper. "There's only one way. You have to die. We'll stage the accident, make it look real. You'll disappear for a while. Only when she believes you're dead will she stop, and during that time, I'll find a way to gather evidence to bring her down." I was shocked by his audacious plan, faking my own death. It was an enormous gamble, but in this situation, it was the only path to survival. "But how? It's too dangerous." "Trust me," Marcus said, his eyes filled with sincerity. "I know how to do this, but I'll need help. Do you have anyone you can trust? Someone who can handle things after you've disappeared?" Instantly, a name popped into my head. Daniel Miller, my only close friend from college, a brilliant and sharp lawyer. I hadn't contacted him in 3 years, ever since I married Kevin, to avoid any jealousy, but I knew that if I called, he would help me without question. "Yes," I nodded. "I have a friend. He's a lawyer." "Good," Marcus said. "Tonight, 8 p.m., at the Wooden Mug Cafe at the end of Z Street. You and your friend meet me there. We'll plan the details. Now go home, act normal. Don't let her suspect anything. Leave the rest to me." With that, Marcus quickly got into his truck and drove off, disappearing into the heavy traffic. I stood there, watching him go, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. The gates of hell had just closed, but another door, one full of uncertainty and danger, was creaking open. In this game of life and death, I was no longer a pawn. I was a player, and I had to win. Returning from the market, my heart was heavy, but a spark of hope had been ignited. Marcus's plan was insane and risky, but it was my only lifeline. The first thing I needed to do was contact Daniel. 3 years was long enough for things to change. Would he even remember me? Would he be willing to put himself in danger to help me? I gathered my courage and dialed the number I still had saved deep in my contacts. The phone rang, each ring echoing for what felt like an eternity. My heart hammered against my ribs. "Hello?" A familiar, warm male voice answered. It was him. "Dan? It's me, Eleanor," I said hesitantly. There was a pause on the other end, then a sharp intake of breath. "Ellie? Is that really you? Oh my God, where have you been for the past 3 years? Do you have any idea how worried I've been?" Dan's voice was a mixture of surprise, reproach, and joy. I knew then that he was still the same good friend. "I'm sorry, Dan. It's complicated. Right now I'm in serious trouble. I need your help." "What kind of trouble? Did that husband of yours do something? I told you I never trusted that guy. Where are you? I'll be right there." Dan's immediate loyalty made me burst into tears. When the whole world had turned its back on me, there was still one person willing to stand by my side unconditionally. Choking back sobs, I told him everything: the humiliation from my mother-in-law, my husband's weakness, Victoria's cruel murder plot, and the plan to fake my death that Marcus and I had just devised. Dan listened in silence, not interrupting. His quiet made me anxious. Maybe my plan was too wild. Maybe he thought I was crazy. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment, then he let out a heavy sigh. "Ellie, you've been through too much. I'm sorry I wasn't there for you sooner." "So, you think the plan is feasible?" I asked, holding my breath. "Feasible?" Dan replied, his tone shifting to the sharp, analytical voice of a lawyer. "It's insane, but in this situation, it's the only way to turn the tables. Victoria Davenport is a cunning old fox. You can't fight her with conventional methods. We have to make her believe you're dead. That's when she'll let her guard down. And this Marcus? He's our ace in the hole." Hearing Dan's analysis gave me a surge of confidence. "So, tonight at 8, the Wooden Mug on Z Street. You'll come with me? We're meeting Marcus to work out the details." "Of course. You stay put. Don't go anywhere. I'll pick you up at 7:30. Leave everything to me." The call ended, and I felt as if a massive weight had been lifted. With Dan by my side, I no longer felt alone. We weren't just two people. We were a team. That afternoon, I forced myself to remain calm, cleaning the house and cooking as usual. I didn't want Victoria to suspect a thing. She remained silent in her room, oblivious to the fact that the prey she was about to strike was setting a trap of its own. At 7:30 sharp, Dan's car pulled up at the end of the block. I made an excuse about needing to buy something and quickly got in. Seeing him after 3 years, he had changed. He was more mature, more distinguished, but the way he looked at me was still filled with the same warmth and concern. "You're too thin," was the first thing he said. I just managed a sad smile. "Let's go. We don't have much time." We arrived at the Wooden Mug, a small cafe tucked away in a quiet alley. Marcus was already there, waiting in a secluded corner. He wore a dark jacket and a baseball cap, still looking stern and unapproachable. When he saw us, he stood and gave a slight nod. Dan shook his hand, a firm, meaningful grip between two men. "I'm Daniel Miller, Eleanor's lawyer." "Just call me Marcus," he replied. We sat down, the atmosphere tense. Dan got straight to the point. "Marcus, I've heard the whole story from Ellie. Your plan is bold, but it's full of risks. We need to calculate every step meticulously." Marcus nodded, his expression serious. "I know. That's why I need a lawyer like you. I'm good with my hands, but when it comes to legal paperwork and strategy, I'm lost." And so, the detailed planning began. Under the dim, yellow light of the cafe, 3 people from 3 different worlds, a wife pushed to the edge, a hitman bound by a debt of honor, and a brilliant lawyer wove together a script, perfect, down to the last detail. First, the scene, Marcus began, his voice a low rumble. Tomorrow, 9 a.m., Ellie will go to the market as usual. I'll be driving the truck, but I won't hit her head on. I'll clip the back of her scooter, hard enough to send her flying. I've prepared a pouch of theatrical blood. It will burst on impact and create a very realistic scene. That's too dangerous, I said, worried. What if you miscalculate? Don't worry, Marcus said with certainty. I've been in this line of work for years. I know how to control the force of the impact. You'll only get a few scrapes. The important thing is your acting. You have to scream, to act like you're in agony. After the accident, someone will call an ambulance, Dan continued. This is the crucial part. We can't let Ellie go to a public hospital. Her information would leak immediately. I've arranged with a small private clinic where I have connections. Their ambulance will be the first on the scene, and they'll take her away for emergency treatment. But how will we get past the police? I asked. Leave it to me, Marcus said. I have ways of holding them up for about 15 minutes. That's enough time for the ambulance to get you away. Once at the clinic, Dan went on, the doctor will declare that Ellie suffered severe head trauma and didn't make it. They'll issue a death certificate. It's a forgery, of course, but it will be enough to fool Victoria initially. The body will be taken to the morgue. Marcus nodded. And that's where I come in again. I'll pose as a relative coming to claim the body. Given Victoria's desire to keep things quiet, this won't be difficult. I'll say the family wants to take you back to your hometown for burial. To not trouble the Davenports, I'll bring an empty casket. Meanwhile, Ellie, you'll be snuck out of the clinic through a service exit and taken to a safe place by my people. Where? I asked. An old apartment building on the outskirts of the city, Dan answered. I've already prepared it. It's discreet. No one will notice you. You'll stay there for a while, with absolutely no contact with anyone except me and Marcus. The plan was laid out with meticulous precision, leaving no room for error. From creating the fake scene and evading the police to forging a death certificate and hiding me away, everything was perfectly calculated. I listened, both terrified and impressed. These 2 men, one with the cold logic of a lawyer, the other with the street smarts of a criminal, had created an unbelievable plan. As for Victoria, Marcus said, his eyes glinting, after you die, she'll be ecstatic. And when people are at their happiest, they are at their most careless. That's when we'll make our move. How? We'll blackmail her, Dan said with a cryptic smile. We'll pretend to be someone who knows the truth about the accident, someone who has video of her transaction with Marcus. We'll demand a large sum of money. She won't dare call the police, and she'll have to come to the meeting point alone. And that meeting point, Marcus added, will be the place of her final judgment. Hearing this, I couldn't help but shudder. This plan was more ruthless than I had imagined, but I had no other choice. Victoria had pushed me to this. I was no longer the meek Eleanor of the past. I was a woman fighting for her life, and in this fight, there was no room for mercy. The meeting ended. Before we parted, Marcus looked at me and said, Ellie, tomorrow, just trust me. I owe your family a life. This time, I'll pay it back. His words moved me deeply. I knew I had not just a friend, but a brother by my side, ready to protect me. That night, I returned to the penthouse, my heart no longer filled with fear, but with a cold resolve. The life or death drama was about to begin, and I was ready for the greatest performance of my life. The dawn of the next day felt different. The sunlight brought no warmth, only an unusual chill. I awoke not with fear, but with a strange and unnerving calm. Like a soldier before battle, all emotions were suppressed, leaving only intense focus. I looked at myself in the mirror. The woman staring back had dark circles from a sleepless night, but her eyes were bright and determined. Today, I would die. And today, I would be reborn. I went through my morning routine as programmed, preparing breakfast, ironing Kevin's shirt. He emerged, still looking tired and distant. He had no idea this would be the last breakfast I would ever make for him. He had no idea the wife he had grown to resent was about to disappear from his life forever. "Going to the market again today?" Kevin asked casually as he ate. His question made my heart leap, but I quickly regained my composure. "Yes, we're out of groceries," I replied, my voice steady. "Okay, be careful," he said. Then he stood up, grabbed his briefcase, and left for work. No hug, no goodbye kiss. Our 3-year marriage ended with that one indifferent sentence. I watched his back as he walked away, a complex mix of pain, disappointment, and also relief, swirling within me. At 9 a.m. sharp, I took my basket, wheeled my old scooter out of the garage, put on my helmet, took one last deep breath of the New York morning air, and started the engine. I drove towards Astoria Boulevard, the road to hell, and also the road to my rebirth. I drove slowly, my heart pounding like a drum. I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw it, Marcus's truck, following me at a safe distance. Everything was proceeding according to the script. As I turned onto a quieter side street, I knew the time had come. I gripped the handlebars, my palms slick with sweat. Crash! A horrifying sound erupted from behind me. A powerful impact threw me and my scooter forward. I flew through the air and landed hard on the asphalt, my head spinning, the world turning upside down. The scooter lay mangled a few feet away, its wheels still spinning. I lay on the hot pavement, a sharp pain shooting through my shoulder and knee, but I couldn't pass out. I had to stay conscious. I had to act. Help. Help me, I moaned, my voice weak. A warm, sticky liquid began to pool beneath me. It was the pouch of theatrical blood Marcus had prepared. It had burst, creating a gruesome pool of red around me. The scene was horrific. A few pedestrians saw what happened and screamed. A crowd started to gather. "Oh my God, an accident! Call 911! That poor woman, she's bleeding so much!" Marcus got out of the truck, his face a mask of panic and fear. His acting was flawless. He ran to my side, knelt, and said with a trembling voice, "Miss, are you okay? I didn't mean to. The brakes failed." People glared at him with contempt. "Brakes failed? You were speeding. Call an ambulance. What are you standing there for?" Everything was going according to plan. Amidst the chaos, a private ambulance, its sirens blaring, screeched to a halt. 2 paramedics in white uniforms jumped out with a stretcher. They were Dan's people. Make way, let us work." They professionally pushed through the crowd, performed a quick assessment, and carefully loaded me onto the stretcher. "Patient has multiple traumas, possible head injury, significant blood loss. We need to get her to the nearest hospital, now," one of them shouted. They pushed me into the ambulance and slammed the doors. The siren wailed again as it sped away, leaving behind the accident scene and the shocked faces of the onlookers. Once the ambulance was out of sight, the paramedic beside me immediately removed the neck brace and helped me sit up. "Miss Vance, are you all right?" he asked, his voice concerned. "I'm fine, just a few scrapes," I replied, breathing a sigh of relief. "Thank you. Don't mention it. Mr. Miller arranged everything." The ambulance didn't head to a hospital. Instead, it turned into a small alley and stopped in front of an old warehouse. The doors opened, and Dan and Marcus were waiting. "Ellie, are you okay?" Dan rushed over, his face etched with worry. "I'm fine," I reassured him. Marcus came closer, his expression still tense. "Is everything at the scene under control?" Dan asked him. "It's handled." Marcus nodded. "The police arrived, but I managed to delay them with a few tricks. They won't suspect a thing. Now I have to go back and finish my role as the remorseful driver." "Be careful," I said. Marcus gave me a slight nod and left. "You, get inside and change," Dan said, pointing to a set of clean clothes. "Then my people will take you to the safe house. Remember, from this moment on, Eleanor Vance is dead. You have to live under a different identity. Do not show your face." I nodded. I followed a woman into the warehouse. When I emerged, I was a different person. My long hair was hidden under a baseball cap, and I wore baggy men's clothes. The woman led me out a different exit to a waiting car, which sped off into the city, carrying me to a strange new world. Meanwhile, At the private clinic Dan had arranged, another act of the play was unfolding. The doctor informed the police that, due to her severe injuries, Eleanor Vance had not survived. A death certificate was issued. The news of my death was quickly relayed to my family. I couldn't imagine how Kevin and Victoria would react. Victoria, undoubtedly, would be gloating. Her dream of getting rid of me had come true. As for Kevin, would he feel even a shred of sorrow? Or would he, too, breathe a sigh of relief, finally unburdened? What would his reaction be when faced with the death of the wife he had just abandoned? In the director's office of Davenport Holdings, Kevin Davenport sat frozen in his high-back leather chair. The phone lay on the desk, the call from the clinic having ended minutes ago. "We regret to inform you, Mr. Davenport, your wife, Eleanor Vance, did not survive her injuries following the accident." The doctor's words echoed in his head, cold and cruel. Dead. Eleanor was dead. He couldn't believe it. Just this morning, she was there, bustling in the kitchen, making him breakfast. Just this morning, she had looked at him with such sad, disappointed eyes. And now, she was gone. A terrifying emptiness enveloped him. He didn't cry. He just sat there, motionless, staring blankly into space. He didn't know what he was feeling. Was it grief? Regret? A paralyzing shock? The door burst open and Victoria rushed in, her face a mask of alarm, but a flicker of ill-concealed joy danced in her eyes. "Kevin, I heard. The girl. Was she really in an accident? How tragic. Such a wretched fate." She rushed to his side, placing a hand on his shoulder in a gesture of feigned comfort, but the tears rolling down her cheeks looked utterly fake. Kevin said nothing. He gently pushed his mother's hand away and walked to the window, looking down at the bustling traffic below. He felt like he was suffocating. "Mom, please don't say anything. I want to be alone," he said, his voice hoarse. Victoria was taken aback by her son's coldness, but quickly resumed her sorrowful expression. "I know you're grieving, son. My heart is broken too. She was my daughter-in-law, after all. But you mustn't let this grief affect your health. Leave the funeral arrangements to me. You're the head of this company. You can't afford to fall apart now." She turned to leave, a smug smile briefly touching her lips. The plan had worked perfectly. The thorn in her side was finally gone. Now her son was free to marry a woman of status, a woman who could elevate his career to new heights. The next day, a small funeral was held. Marcus, playing the part of Eleanor's long-lost cousin from out of state, informed them that the family wished to take her body back to her hometown for a traditional burial. Victoria and Kevin, of course, had no objections. They wanted the matter concluded as quickly as possible. Kevin stood before the empty casket in a black suit, his face devoid of expression. He didn't shed a single tear. People whispered around him. Some called him cold-hearted, showing no sadness for his recently deceased wife. Others thought he was simply too shocked to cry. Only Kevin knew the truth. He couldn't cry because his heart was a chaotic mess of conflicting emotions. He felt guilt and remorse. He remembered his harsh words, his cowardly silence as his mother insulted her. If he hadn't treated her so poorly, maybe she wouldn't have died such a tragic death. But alongside the guilt, he also felt a sense of release. Yes, release. He no longer had to face her sad eyes every day. He was no longer torn between his mother and his wife. He was free. Eleanor's death, though painful, had opened a new path for him, a future his mother had meticulously planned. After the funeral, Kevin's life seemed to return to normal. He went to work, attended social events. The only difference was the cold emptiness of the penthouse. There was no one waiting for him at night, no one to prepare him a hot meal. Sometimes, in the dead of night, he would instinctively call out her name, "Ellie, can you get me a glass of water?" before jolting back to the reality that she was gone. Victoria, on the other hand, was openly cheerful. She began redecorating the house, throwing out all of my belongings as if to erase any trace of my existence. She even started a campaign to find Kevin a new wife. "Kevin, darling, you must meet the daughter of the chairman of Sterling Properties. Her name is Tiffany. She's beautiful and brilliant. I've arranged for you to meet her this weekend." "Mom, my wife just died," Kevin said, annoyed. "So what?" Victoria brushed it off. "The dead are dead. The living must move on. You can't mope around forever. You have to think about your career, your future. Tiffany will be the perfect partner for you." Under his mother's pressure, Kevin eventually agreed to the meeting. He had no feelings for the girl, but he didn't protest. He allowed his mother to arrange his life, becoming a puppet on her strings. His life drifted on in a haze of guilt and emptiness. Until one night, as he sat alone in his study, trying to bury himself in work, he saw something small and shiny under his desk. He bent down and picked it up. It was a small button, shaped like a tiny white daisy. He recognized it instantly. It was from a pair of pajamas Eleanor loved. It must have fallen off without her noticing. He clutched the button in his hand, and a memory flooded back. He had been working late. Eleanor had brought him a glass of warm milk, wearing those very pajamas. She had smiled, her gentle, warm smile. "You're working so hard. Drink some milk," he remembered snapping at her. "You're so annoying." "I'm busy. Don't bother me." She had quietly put the milk down and left, her shoulders slumped in defeat. Thinking back now, he realized how cruel he had been. He opened a desk drawer to put the button away, but froze. Inside, next to a stack of files, was a small wooden box. Curiously, he opened it. Inside was a small journal and a 2-line pregnancy test. Kevin stood motionless. A 2-line pregnancy test. It meant Eleanor had been pregnant. His hands trembled as he picked up the journal. He never knew she kept one. He flipped through the pages, her neat handwriting appearing before him. October 12th. I found out I'm pregnant today. I'm so happy. I don't know how to tell Kevin. He's so busy with work. Will he be happy about this? October 19th. I still haven't told Kevin. His mother doesn't seem to like me. If she finds out I'm pregnant, will she accept this baby? October 25th. I've decided to keep this a secret for a while. I'll wait until Kevin's work settles down, then I'll tell him. My baby, please grow up strong and healthy. Mommy will protect you. Kevin's whole body shook as he read. He was going to be a father, he had a child, and he never knew, and now both his wife and his child were gone. An overwhelming wave of pain and regret crashed over him, squeezing his heart. What had he done? He had indirectly killed his wife and his unborn child. He slammed his head on the desk. For the first time since Eleanor's death, he wept, gut-wrenching, belated sobs of bitter regret. But he had no idea that somewhere else, the wife he thought was dead was watching everything. His tragic drama had only just begun, and the price he and his mother would have to pay would be far greater. In the old apartment building on the outskirts of the city, I sat in front of a laptop, watching Kevin's every move through a micro camera I had secretly placed in his study long ago. I saw him break down, saw the belated agony and regret on his face, but my heart felt nothing. What good were his tears now? Could they bring my child back to life? Could they erase the wounds he and his mother had inflicted on me? No, it was too late. He looks pathetic, crying like that, Daniel said, sitting beside me, sipping his coffee with a cynical air. Typical weak man, only knows what he had when it's gone. I closed the laptop. Let's not talk about him. How is our plan progressing? Everything is ready, Dan said, his expression turning serious. Marcus has gathered enough information on Victoria's shady business dealings, and I've drafted the first blackmail letter. The bait is set, we're just waiting for the big fish to bite. The next day, an unmarked envelope was secretly placed at the door of the Davenport penthouse. Inside was a memory card and a handwritten note with scrawled words, "Watch this. If you want to keep quiet, don't call the police." Curious, Victoria inserted the memory card into her computer. A short, shaky, blurry video, filmed from a distance, appeared on the screen. It showed her meeting Marcus in a deserted cafe, handing him a thick stack of cash. The audio was unclear, but the visual was undeniable. Victoria's face turned pale. She trembled as she ejected the card, her heart pounding. Who filmed this? Had that Marcus character betrayed her, or had a third party been watching? 100 questions swirled in her head. Just then, her phone pinged with a new text message from an unknown number. "I know what you did. Your daughter-in-law's accident was no accident. I have all the proof. If you don't want your world to come crashing down, your son's reputation ruined, and yourself rotting in a prison cell, then get $2 million ready. Tomorrow night, 10 p.m., bring the money to the old meatpacking plant on the west side, and remember, come alone. If I see a single cop, this video will be on the front page of every newspaper by morning." Victoria's body shook with rage and fear. $2 million. It wasn't a small sum, but compared to her family's honor and her son's future, it was nothing. Who was this person who dared to blackmail her? She gritted her teeth, her mind racing. Calling the police was too risky. This person had made the threat clear. Hiring her own thugs to handle it was also a bad idea. They might just turn on her and blackmail her further. Ultimately, she decided to handle it herself. Who was she? She was Victoria Davenport, a woman who had navigated the cutthroat business world for decades. There was nothing she couldn't handle. She assumed this blackmailer was just some small-time crook trying his luck. She would go to the meeting, but not to hand over the money. She would teach this person a lesson. The next evening, Victoria prepared the money. She took out a large sum, but only a fraction was real cash. The rest was fake, cleverly layered with a few real bills on top. She packed it all into a black briefcase. For protection, she concealed a small knife and a can of pepper spray in her handbag. She was ready for a confrontation. She drove alone to the abandoned meatpacking plant, following the address from the text. The road was bumpy and flanked by desolate fields. The car's headlights cut through the misty night, illuminating a scene straight out of a horror movie. The old plant loomed before her like a giant, sleeping monster, its brick walls stained, its metal roof rusted. The faint, foul stench of decay and old blood hung in the air, making her shudder. But her arrogance and confidence overrode her fear. She took the briefcase, got out of the car, and walked straight inside. The heavy iron door creaked ominously before slamming shut behind her. It was pitch black inside, save for a few weak moonbeams piercing through holes in the roof. Victoria turned on her phone's flashlight, scanning the area. Iron hooks dangled from the ceiling, cold stone butchering tables stood like altars, and dark puddles of an unknown liquid covered the floor. The damp, cold, and sickeningly sweet smell of rot made her feel nauseous. "Is anyone here?" she called out, her voice trying for firmness. "I brought the money. Come and get it." The only reply was the echo of her own voice. A seed of unease began to sprout. Was this a trap? She backed away, turning to leave, but the iron door was locked from the outside. In a panic, she pounded on it. "Open the door. Who the hell is playing games with me? Open up." But it was useless. Just then, a sinister, cackling laugh echoed from a dark corner of the plant. "Heh heh heh, you came? Very brave." Victoria jumped, spinning around and pointing her flashlight towards the sound. A figure slowly emerged from the shadows. He was tall and burly, wearing a leather apron stained with dark, reddish-brown blotches. In his hand, he held a massive meat cleaver, its blade gleaming in the flashlight's beam. Half of his face was obscured by shadow, but his smile was unmistakable, a wicked, depraved, and deathly grin. This was no ordinary blackmailer. This was a butcher, a real one. Victoria froze, her entire body trembling with fear. The knife and pepper spray she had brought suddenly seemed like children's toys against the gleaming cleaver and the man's imposing figure. Who are you?" she stammered. The butcher didn't answer. He just licked his lips, raising the cleaver to eye level, admiring its sharp edge. "Your skin looks soft," he said, his voice a horrifying, raspy drawl, probably much easier to cut through than a pig's hide. Victoria let out a terrified scream, stumbling backward until her back hit a cold wall. She had walked right into a trap, a perfect trap, and tonight she was not the hunter, she was the prey. Victoria felt an icy chill crawl up her spine. The smell of the slaughterhouse, damp rot, and the metallic tang of old blood assaulted her senses, making her want to vomit. But the terror was far worse than any physical revulsion. The man before her wasn't a blackmailer. He was a demon clawed up from the depths of hell. The crazed light in his eyes, the grotesque yellow-toothed grin, he wasn't looking at the briefcase full of money she clutched to her chest. He was looking at her, sizing her up, the way a butcher inspects a prize pig before the slaughter. The money's here," Victoria stammered, pushing the briefcase forward, her voice a shredded whisper. "It's all here. 2 million. Take it and let me go." The butcher let out a guttural, horrifying laugh that echoed through the cavernous space. "Money? I don't need money. I need something else." He advanced slowly, dragging the tip of his cleaver across a stone table, the screech of metal on stone setting, Victoria's teeth on edge. She screamed, pressing herself against the cold brick wall. What do you want? Stay away from me!" "What do I want?" The butcher paused, tilting his head in mock contemplation. "Let's see. Your flesh looks tender and fatty, probably tastes better than pork. Your bones, I could grind them up for fish food, and your skin, your skin would make a lovely lampshade." Every word was a hammer blow to Victoria's already frayed nerves. She had never known terror like this. She was a woman of power, used to giving orders, used to money-solving every problem. But in front of this madman, her wealth and influence were meaningless. "You're insane!" she shrieked in desperation. "Do you know who I am? If you lay a finger on me, my son will hunt you down." "Your son?" The butcher laughed again. "That weak-willed mama's boy? He couldn't even protect his own wife. How is he going to protect you?" Speaking of his wife. He took another step, the cleaver now inches from Victoria's face. "You hired someone to kill her, didn't you? Did you think you could get away with it?" Victoria froze. "He knows. How could he possibly know? Was he working with Marcus? Was he Marcus himself? No, that was impossible. Marcus was just a small-time thug. He wouldn't have the guts to confront her like this." What are you talking about? I don't understand," she stammered, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her. "Don't understand?" The butcher pressed the flat of the cold blade against her neck, making her gasp. "Then let me refresh your memory. The truck. The accident. Your lovely daughter-in-law. How much did you pay for her life? 100,000? 2? Or do you think a human life is just that cheap?" Victoria couldn't speak. Fear had seized her throat. She realized this man wasn't just some random blackmailer. He knew everything. He wasn't here for money. He was here to collect a debt, a blood debt. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, Kevin was drowning his sorrows in alcohol. Ever since finding Eleanor's journal, he had been living in a self-inflicted hell of guilt. He hadn't told his mother what he'd found. He was afraid of her anger, afraid to admit that his own cowardice had helped kill his wife and child. He drank to forget, but the more he drank, the clearer Eleanor's image became in his mind, her gentle smile, her sad eyes, the words in her journal. It was torture. "Kevin, let's go home, man. You're wasted," a friend said, clapping him on the shoulder. Kevin shoved his hand away. "Leave me alone. I want a drink. I'm a worthless bastard. My wife is dead, my child is dead, and it's all my fault," he roared, before collapsing onto the table, sobbing like a child. He stumbled home, driving recklessly. The luxurious penthouse felt vast and cold. He collapsed onto the sofa where Eleanor had huddled on that fateful night. He closed his eyes, desperate for the oblivion of sleep. But a familiar scent startled him, his mother's perfume. It was strong, as if she had just come in. He blearily looked at the clock. Nearly 11 p.m. Where would his mother be at this hour? A vague suspicion crept into his alcohol-fogged brain. He remembered her strange lack of grief, her haste to get rid of Eleanor's things, her constant pushing for him to start dating again. What mother acts like that when her daughter-in-law has just died? He staggered upstairs to her room, but it was empty. He searched the house. Her car was still in the garage. How did she leave? Back in the living room, something in the trash can caught his eye. A torn envelope. He pieced it together. On the back, he could faintly make out the indentations of words that had been written on a note on top of it. Old meatpacking plant, West Side. The meatpacking plant? What was his mother doing there in the middle of the night? A deep unease settled over him. He was about to call her when he saw an unread text message on his phone from an unknown number. He'd been too drunk to notice it earlier. He opened it. "If you want to know the truth about your wife's death, and if you want to save your mother, come to the old meatpacking plant on the west side. But don't call the police. You're not so innocent yourself, you spineless son." Kevin felt a jolt, as if struck by lightning. The truth about Eleanor's death, save his mother? And why did this person say he wasn't innocent? Questions swarmed his mind. There was no time to think. Kevin bolted from the house, got in his car, and sped towards the west side, towards an unknown fate and a truth more terrible than he could ever imagine. As Kevin's car screeched to a halt in front of the desolate building, the adrenaline had completely sobered him. He burst through the iron doors, and the scene that greeted him shattered his world. His mother, Victoria, was a crumpled, pathetic figure in the corner. Her expensive clothes were ruined, her face a mess of tears and terror, her eyes vacant and broken. She was no longer a queen but a cornered animal, stripped of all dignity. "Mom!" he cried, starting towards her, but froze. In the center of the room stood Marcus, no longer playing the part of a madman. He was calm, his arms crossed, his expression like ice. "You! What did you do to my mother?" Kevin roared, lunging at him. Marcus effortlessly deflected the blow. "Calm down, pretty boy," he said, his voice flat. "I haven't touched her. You should ask what she planned to do to your wife." He gestured with his chin towards Victoria. "Go on, ask her if your wife's accident was really an accident. Ask her how much she paid me to kill her." Kevin stared at his mother. She shook her head frantically. "No, he's lying, Kevin. Don't believe him." But her panicked eyes told the real story. The horrible truth crashed down on Kevin. "Mom, is it true?" he whispered, pleading for it to be a lie. Did you kill her?" Victoria's only answer was a broken sob. The silence was her confession. Kevin's world imploded. His mother, the woman he revered, was a murderer. And the victim was his wife, the mother of his unborn child. "Why?" he screamed, the sound echoing with pure agony. "Why would you do that?" "For you!" Victoria shrieked back. "I did it all for you. She wasn't good enough. She was holding you back. Good for me?" Kevin laughed, a wild, tear-soaked sound. "You killed my wife. You killed your own grandchild. You're not my mother. You're a monster." He staggered back, lost in a storm of grief and betrayal. Then, from the deepest shadows of the slaughterhouse, a figure emerged, stepping into a lone moonbeam. She wore a simple white dress, her face serene, but her eyes were cold as ice. "It was me," a familiar clear voice said. Kevin froze, his body turning to stone. He thought he was hallucinating, that he was in hell. "Ellie," he breathed. "No, it can't be. You're dead." The woman before him was Eleanor. Flesh and blood. She had come back from the dead to deliver judgment. "That's right," Eleanor said with a sad smile. "The Eleanor you knew, the meek, obedient wife, is dead. She died in the accident your mother arranged. The person standing before you now is someone else, someone who has returned to demand justice." Kevin's mind reeled. A frantic joy surged through him. She was alive. But it was immediately crushed by an even greater fear. If she was alive, then all of this, the accident, her death, this scene, was it all her plan? You tricked me," he stammered. "Why?" "Tricked you?" Eleanor's laugh was brittle. "Compared to your mother hiring a man to murder me, does my little deception even register? I did this so you would see, Kevin. So you would see the true face of the mother you always defended. So you would see how your silence and your weakness nearly got me and your child killed." The words, "your child," were the final, fatal stab. Kevin collapsed to his knees on the filthy floor, unable to meet her gaze. He finally understood. He wasn't a victim. He was an accomplice. I'm sorry," he sobbed. "Ellie, I'm so sorry. I was wrong. Please forgive me. Can we start over? I swear I'll protect you. I'll make it up to you and the baby." "The baby?" she said, her voice devoid of warmth. "Where were you when your mother was plotting to kill us? You were silent, Kevin. Your silence was the sharpest knife of all. It killed my love, and it killed my trust." She looked at him, her eyes showing no flicker of her old affection. "Get up, Kevin. It's over." She then turned her gaze to Victoria. "And for you, the play is finished. Now, you pay the price." As if on cue, the iron doors opened again. This time, it was Daniel, accompanied by 2 uniformed police officers. The trap had snapped shut. Victoria shrieked and tried to run, but her legs gave out. Daniel handed an officer a phone. "Here is the complete audio confession of Victoria Davenport, detailing her conspiracy to commit murder." "Victoria Davenport," the officer said, his voice firm, "you are under arrest." "No, Kevin, save me." "Son, help your mother," she pleaded, but Kevin remained kneeling, a statue of shame and grief. He couldn't save her. He wouldn't. The sharp click of handcuffs was the sound of justice being served. As they led Victoria away, still screaming curses at Eleanor, a strange quiet fell over the slaughterhouse. All that was left was the wreckage of their lives. "Thank you, Marcus," Eleanor said softly. The big man just nodded. "I paid back my debt," he said, before turning to the officers to give his own statement. Daniel put a comforting hand on Eleanor's shoulder. "It's over, Ellie." He looked at Kevin, then back at her, understanding this was a conversation they needed to have alone. He quietly excused himself. Kevin finally looked up, his eyes red and swollen. "Ellie, Get up, Kevin," she said, her voice calm. He scrambled to his feet, grabbing at her arm. "It's not over. Ellie, please, give me one more chance." Eleanor gently removed his hand. "Kevin, a mirror that's been shattered can be glued back together, but the cracks will always be there. We can't go back." She looked at him, not with hatred, but with a profound and final sadness. "Live a better life. Learn from this. Don't let your weakness destroy you again." She turned and walked out of the slaughterhouse without looking back, stepping out into the clean night air. Above, the sky was full of stars. Her old life was over. A new one was just beginning. 2 years later, Victoria Davenport was serving a life sentence. Davenport Holdings had gone bankrupt, and Kevin was forced to start over from nothing. Eleanor, with Daniel's help, had opened a small, successful bookstore cafe in Brooklyn, fulfilling a lifelong dream. It became her sanctuary, a symbol of her independence. One rainy afternoon, Kevin walked into her cafe. He was thinner, worn down, the old arrogance gone. He sat quietly in a corner, ordered a black coffee, and just watched her, a sad, distant look in his eyes. He didn't come to plead, just to see that she was okay. They had become something like strangers who shared a devastating secret. 3 years after that night, they met again at Daniel's wedding. "You look beautiful, Ellie," Kevin said with a gentle smile. "Thank you, Kevin. You look better too," she replied honestly. They stood watching the sunset over the water. "Ellie," he began hesitantly, "I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but could we maybe start again? As friends?" She looked into his eyes and saw, not desperation, but a quiet sincerity. She had learned to forgive, not for him, but for herself, to release the final chains of the past. "Okay, Kevin," she said, "we can be friends." A radiant smile lit up his face. It wasn't the beginning of a renewed romance, but something far more meaningful, the peaceful, final closing of a painful chapter. Eleanor's story was not a fairy tale, but in the end, she found her own happiness, a happiness built not on a man, but on her own strength and resilience. And that was the most beautiful ending of all.